Hello folks, Jason Chrisman here, Grazing Acres Farms. Today I wanted to take a couple minutes and show you how you can make a poly reel for mob grazing for just a few bucks. Okay, what I use here is these extension cord winders. You can pick them up relatively cheap, and I'm going to show you how to convert them into a poly reel. The first thing that I do is I bore a hole through the center of the reel using an 1/8 inch drill bit. Then I get a nice stiff piece of wire, and I like galvanized, it don't rust. Copper don't rust, but it's kind of weak, very pliable. I shove the wire all the way through one side and out the other, and I bend it. On this particular side, you can see a little curly Q. That curly Q is to hook on the fence when the reel is at a fence. The end of the poly braid ties to this wire, and that's how I start my wind. Relatively simple, and you can pick up these reels for right around $8 a piece at TSC. Now, granted, the plastic that these cord winders are made with is relatively cheap. You might only get a few months out of them in the sun. You can see the really dark orange and the really pale orange here on mine. The pale orange is where it's been in the sun, and the UV is starting to break it down. And what's going to happen is, you see these yellow corners, eventually this is going to break out. But if I can get roughly a year, and you can see on this one here, I put the date, I just set these up on the 9th of October, which is when I picked up my new poly braid. The poly braid itself, I put some money into my poly braid. That's about $50 a roll from PowerFlex. If you would like some information on that, I'll leave a link in the description of this video. And then on the far end of the poly wire, I like to use these handles. They give you the option to hook it to the fence and make the poly wire hot, or you can hook it in there and it's not hot. The cattle don't know. Who's going to tell them? So that's what the handle looks like on the end, and I picked that up from PowerFlex as well. Now, back to the poly braid, I've learned over the years that when you buy cheap wire and you plan to do this for years upon years, you're only hurting yourself. You're only going to spend more expense in the long run than if you would have just went and bought the good stuff to start with. Alright, little man? This stuff here can hold, like, I think it's 450 pounds of weight. Not that I ever planned to put it through that, but we've got some pretty rough terrain here. And when you're standing at one end, rolling in the other end, and the poly wire gets dragged through everything, it's something to really think about. This poly wire here, or poly braid, is very, very well made. It's actually some of the best I've ever seen, and a lot of your more, I guess, famous mob grazers will tell you this is what they use. Hate to drop any names, but Greg Judy's one of them. So there you go. That's how you can set you up a reel. You buy the reel for $8. You buy the handle at the other end of the wire for $2, and then whatever you put in your poly wire or poly braid. Myself, if I was to weigh the option and say, do I buy a good reel for $50 and some cheap wire, or do I buy the cheap reel and the good wire, what would my options be? I would definitely go this route, because your time is worth something. And when you have junk poly wire or poly braid, every one of these guys out here is going to investigate it day after day. And when these guys figure out that your poly braid or poly wire sucks, first thing they're going to do is escape, creating more work for you. And I've also learned that over the years, when they don't respect the poly wire, it just creates more work on you, period. So I hope that's helped you. You have any questions about the homemade reel, leave them in the comments below. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. That'd help boost it in the YouTube search ranks. And thanks for watching, folks. Grazing Acres Farm. I guess I'm getting inspected. It's always my cattle too. Casey, what are you doing? What are you doing, Casey? You're gonna break it.